This is Healing at Soul Level with your host, Shawna Williams. Shawna is here to provide various forms of healing that are non-invasive, that promote relaxation and aid the body in naturally healing itself by using ancient healing techniques that have been around for centuries. So please welcome the host of Healing at Soul Level, Shawna Williams.
Hello and welcome to Healing at Soul Level. I'm your host, Shawna Williams. Christina Vargas has been a yoga teacher since 2005, and her love and passion for the healing arts led her to Ayurveda. She graduated from the California College of Ayurveda in 2009, where she studied to be an Ayurvedic Health Practitioner, Ayurvedic Chef, Ayurvedic Herbalist, and a yoga therapist. She is especially passionate about bringing nourishment and the science of Ayurveda to women in all stages of life. Welcome to the show, Christina Vargas.
Thank you, Shawna, so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're on the show. I'd like for you to tell people a little bit more about yourself.
Well, like you said, I've been teaching yoga since 2005, and just becoming a yoga teacher, I knew that there was more, to yoga than what was happening when I was in the classroom and group settings and on my mat. And I wanted to know more. And Ayurveda is the sister science to yoga, as we'll go into in today's show. And just knowing more about the healing aspects, knowing more that, my body could heal itself is sort of intuitive. It came intuitively to me, and I wanted to learn more. So
okay.
I'm a mom of two, and just very passionate about, food is medicine.
So running your own business and being a mom of two, that must keep you very busy.
It does, and I'm so grateful for Ayurveda to help me find that balance.
So are your kids, are they old enough to understand Ayurveda a little bit?
They are. And what's so funny is that I always tell my clients when I'm teaching them the science of Ayurveda, I tell them that this is a science that's so easy that a 5-year-old can understand it. So my kids are very in tune with the science. Sometimes I don't know if they really know, specifically, the word Ayurveda or what it is, but they definitely live the lifestyle whether they know it or not.
I mean, that's good because it's such a healthy practice, and it keeps you in routine, right? Isn't there routine things you do daily? And that's what I thought. So what exactly, or I can't say exactly, but give us a little more information about what Ayurveda is.
Absolutely. Well, Ayurveda is, let's talk about the word first. So it's a Sanskrit word. It's over 5,000-year-old science, and it originated from India. And the word Ayurveda, if we kind of break that word down, the word Ayu, A-Y-U-R, means life, and Veda, V-E-D-A, means science or knowledge. So the literal translation of Ayurveda is the science or knowledge of life, and it encompasses the entire mind, body, and spirit. It is a holistic science, and it's, living your life in balance, moving with the rhythms of nature. And it's based on the 5 elements of nature: air, ether, fire, water, and earth. And Ayurveda views health and disease as the end result of how we interact with nature.
So I guess when you're imbalanced or something on one of those aspects, that's whenever your disease is presented, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So, actions that we have that are in harmony with our own inner nature create health, while disharmonious actions can create challenges that we have in our body, in our mind, and in our spirit. And like I said earlier, Ayurveda and yoga are sister sciences. And together they teach us how to develop a greater harmony within our environment through all of our senses, and how to, love and care for ourselves more deeply.
Okay. And then
yoga.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yoga is more of the spiritual side of Ayurveda, and Ayurveda is more the healing side of yoga. So they're like two sides of the same coin.
Oh, okay. So yoga is normally a little bit more spiritual, or it is the spiritual side. That I didn't know for sure. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, when I stepped on my mat many years ago, I wasn't stepping on my mat for spiritual purposes. Like most people, I stepped on my mat for physical benefit. But over time, that leads to more of self-inquiry. And, as I said earlier, it led me to more of an intuitive knowing that my body can heal itself. And that's how I found Ayurveda.
And it originates in India or somewhere else?
In India over 5,000 years ago, although I've been saying that for over 10 years. So we know that the science is much older than that.
Right.
And it is considered the mother of all healing. So anything and everything that we know about the body, about health, about wellness, healing, all stems from Ayurveda. And many of its roots are in some very common ways of healing that we use over here in the West, such as acupuncture, acupressure, Chinese medicine, the use of herbs and aromatherapy, all have their roots in Ayurveda. And because yoga has become so popular, now Ayurveda is becoming more of the mainstream way of living. And that's what it is. It's a lifestyle. It's not meant to be a diet or a fad. It's a lifestyle. And like I said, it's living in harmony with Mother Nature.
Okay, well, before we got on the show, we had a little talk, and you told me something about sense therapy.
Right. So in terms of what I do to support clients in remembering their body's intuitive nature to heal themselves, what I use is called 5-sense therapy. And so it's looking at the ways in which we interact with nature using our 5 senses. So our sense of smell, our sense of taste, our sense of hearing and touch, our sense of sight. And, working through those 5 senses to make sure that they're working in harmony with the rhythms of nature.
So is there something that I could do on my own to work through each of these senses?
Absolutely. And, if we look at and define disease according to Ayurveda, one of the causes of disease is misusing our 5 senses. And so, if we think about the sense of hearing, for example, let's say, on the way to work, maybe you have a half-hour, 20-minute commute, and then on your way home, you have that same commute. Maybe you stop for an errand or something like that. But, overall, an hour in the car a day. And let's say the entire time you're listening to news talk radio, not your kind of show. Your kind of show seems harmonious. But a show that, may talk about political news or maybe what's happening in the world. And while we want to be informed and be educated, listening to that too often, too much, every day, for many hours a day, think about what that does to our mind, to our body, to our spirit. It can create fear. It can create judgment, anger. It can create, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, or, can alter our belief system. So, our sense of hearing can impact our well-being. Same thing with sight. If you think about the rhythms of nature, the sun goes down, yet what do? We turn on all the lights and the TV and the phone and get out our computer at night before bed.
Right. And I'm sorry to stop you.
Different.
I'm sorry to stop you right here, but we need to stop and take a quick break. Hello, and welcome back to Healing at Soul Level. And I'm your host, Shawna Williams. Today, we're talking with Christina Vargas about Ayurveda. And when we left off, we were talking about 5-sense therapy, or the 5 senses. And we had just finished talking about hearing, and now we've moved on to sight. So I'm going to have Christina take it from here.
All right. So as we said, looking at our five senses and how those are rhythmically moving with nature and whether those are harmonious or disharmonious. So we talked about the sense of hearing, and last we talked about the sense of sight. And so if we're moving with the rhythms of nature and the sun goes down, ideally, so does our energy. However, when we usually get home from work, many of us turn the TV on. We kind of start to, amp things up in our house by turning the lights on and maybe, finishing up last-minute emails and getting out the computer and, looking at our phone and our tablets and things like that, which would be disharmonious. If the sun is going down, we should honor that. That kind of makes sense with how we would misuse the sense of sight.
Yes, I can see that now.
Another example would be, watching inappropriate content, watching TV shows or movies that would be disturbing to the mind and the body.
Mm-hmm. I make a practice of not watching anything like that before I go to bed because, I'll either have dreams of it, which I remember all of my dreams, so that's not good, or something like that. So, I definitely make sure I don't watch the news or anything before I go to bed.
Right. That's good. And then moving into the sense of taste, what do you think that would look like?
Let's see. So taste maybe, you know what? That one I cannot think of what, unless it's just something you don't like. I really don't know.
Yeah, well, so using, our sense of taste is something that we do, for most of us, 3 times a day, maybe more. Mm-hmm. And so what would that look like disharmoniously would be maybe too much of the sweet taste. Too much salty foods, too much fried foods, too much alcohol, caffeine. So misuse of the sense of taste is, eating too much of one particular type of food that would be inappropriate for us. Or, how about if you had an awareness that perhaps every time you have garlic and onion or tomato sauce, you kind of feel indigestion or heartburn, and it's something that you're aware of, yet you do it anyway, right? Uh-huh. So kind of going against what you know to be true is a sign of disease. And in this case, misusing the sense of taste can cause disease. Does that make sense?
Perfectly, because I actually will taste something, and if it tastes like it has pepper in it, I stop immediately because I cannot eat nightshades. So yes, I know exactly what you're talking about now. I can't have the tomatoes and the peppers and those things. And so when I taste it, I stop. But if I kept on, I'd be sick.
But how
right?
And how many of us don't? Instead of having one cookie, we have the whole sleeve of cookies. Or instead of having a bite of ice cream, we eat the whole tub. So we end up overeating or eating too much of one of the 6 tastes in Ayurveda.
Okay. And so let's see, we've got hearing, sight, taste. Is it touch?
Yeah, so the sense of touch and how that is, used disharmoniously. And, we look at this as, maybe too much sex, possibly putting the wrong types of food, but too much chemical type products on our skin, things like that.
Okay, and for some reason I'm at a loss. What is the 5th one?
Well, so then we look at, other senses, like, in the 5 sense therapies, we look at, how do we bring in appropriate practices? So, we use things like mantras or chanting, or right sounds when we use the sense of hearing. We use the right, the sense of sight. We use color therapy or chromotherapy. So using colors to bring in harmonious, colors and appropriate content for our eyes. And we, look at the types of foods that we eat. And so that's the sense of taste. And then again, not putting, things that are chemically inappropriate on our skin, more natural products, and looking at how, we might be having too much of sex, or maybe, we're not touching ourselves enough, through, practices like abhyanga, which we may get into a little bit later, but massaging the body and loving the body up in a, very harmonious way. And then the last sense would be, our sense of smell, so, have you ever walked through, a rose garden? How does that make you feel? Or when you walk into a movie theater and you smell the smell of popcorn, or you walk into your grandmother's or your mother's kitchen and there's that smell, we live in a very aromatic environment and world. And so what smells may be appropriate for you could be inappropriate for me or not harmonious for me. And so, of course, we look at essential oils, and that's a really harmonious way to bring in a proper environment of the sense of smell. And just like there are foods, which we'll get into later, but just like there are foods that are appropriate for you but may not be appropriate for me, there are, elements of the aromas that may be appropriate for you but not for me. So our sense of smell.
Okay. So those are like the elements? Is that what is considered the elements of Ayurveda? What you just described?
Right. So Ayurveda, as we said earlier, is the science or knowledge of life, and it's the science of the 5 elements of nature, which is air, ether, fire, water, and earth. And
okay. So then what we'll do...
We are made up of each of the 5 elements.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to stop and take a break, and we'll come back and finish talking about the elements.
Great.
Welcome back to Healing at Soul Level. I'm your host, Shawna Williams. Today, my guest is Christina Vargas, and we're talking about Ayurveda. So when we left off from break, we just started talking about the 5 elements that make up Ayurveda. So, Christina?
Yes. So, again, Ayurveda is the science or knowledge of life, and it is based on the science of the 5 elements of nature: air, ether, fire, water, and earth. And we are made up of each one of those 5 elements and their qualities. So if we look, for example, at the elements air and ether, and, I might, do them individually, but air and ether actually have the same qualities. And in Ayurveda, we call these the 20 attributes. And I'll just go through, 4 and their opposites. So Air and ether are both cold, they're both dry, they're both light, and they're unstable. Okay. Ether, most people kind of don't know what that is. Even, I think scientists have a hard time, identifying or describing and defining ether, but it is defined in Ayurveda as space. And further, it's defined as the space that holds air. And so we look at, the lining of the balloon, right? That's the space that holds air. If you think about what's, holding our entire galaxy, our planets, the stars, beyond the moon, beyond the planet, that's ether. And so air and ether, these 2 elements have the same qualities. Again, cold, light, dry, and they're mobile, okay? And then we have the fire element, which, we all know is hot, and it's light and it's dry, and it's unstable. Okay, and then we have the water and earth elements. And the water and earth elements also have the same qualities in that they are cold. And when we think about earth, a lot of people say, well, the earth is hot. When we look at earth qualities, we look at earthly matter, like the bark of a tree or wood or a rock or sand. And in their natural elements, they are cold. And so water and earth together are cold, they are heavy, they are stable, right? And they're heavy. And so these qualities make up, the earth and water elements. And each of us is made up of biological principles, which we call in Ayurveda doshas, okay? And dosha, there's the Vata dosha or the Vata dosha, spelled Vata, and it holds the energy of the air and ether elements. And the Pitta dosha holds the energy of the fire and a little bit of water elements. And the Kapha dosha is the energy of the earth and water elements. And so again, we said that was moist and cold and heavy. And so we are a combination of all three of these doshas: Vata, Pitta, P-I-T-T-A, and Kapha, K-A-P-H-A, or pronounced Kapha.
Yes, I actually found out that mine was Vata. And it helped me so much because I used the correct oils. I would use olive oil, which stood on the outside of my skin and never absorbed. And then I found out almond oil was better for Vata, and it absorbs. So yes, Ayurveda has helped me a lot.
That is so great. I love that. And I hope we get to talk more about how to use oils as we talk about the seasons and how, your listeners can bring balance to them, to their body and mind through these practices. So as we look at the Vata dosha, if we can maybe go through each of the doshas and give your listeners just an understanding of what each one kind of looks like and their energies.
Please do.
The Vata dosha holds the energy, like we said, of the air and ether elements, and it really governs movement. So if you think about air, it governs, the movement, our nerve impulses, our ability to breathe, the pulsation of the heart, and our creativity and our flexibility. So those with more of a Vata constitution are very imaginative. They're detail-oriented, they're very creative, and they're on the go. They have a very active mind, and, Vatas move like the wind, right? And they change direction often. And, like I said, they're very creative. They might have a job as an actor or a musician or an artist. They typically talk with their hands, and, they move a lot, so their speech is rather fast. And I like to think about each one and give an animal. So, let you guess, Shawna, what kind of animal do you think moves really fast in their element of air?
In the element of air, because the first thing that popped in my mind was cheetah, but that's more earth, right? So air would be maybe eagle, hawk, or something like that, or is it any animal? Because if it's any animal, I would still say cheetah.
Cheetahs are moving really fast, so I would agree with you there. And yes, absolutely, a bird, right? They're in their element. They're moving rather, quickly. How about a butterfly or a bee? That's usually the example that I give, but the ones you came up with are also appropriate.
Or humming bee, because they really change directions easily.
Hummingbird. Yeah.
Hummingbird. I said humming bee. Hummingbird. Yes.
Yeah. And so, when Vatas get out of balance, when those with the Vata nature lack a consistent schedule, it disturbs the body's, internal energy, which we call prana, right? Life force energy. And that can lead to things like anxiety, feelings of nervousness or overwhelm. It can lead to insomnia, difficulty to, fall asleep or to stay asleep. And perhaps even things like constipation or dry stool or bloating or gas. It can also lead to dry skin. So like you said, oiling the body can be a really great healing practice to counter the increased air and ether elements that comes into the body. So Vata does best when they have stable, regular routines to help channel and focus their very large and natural amount of energy. And with structures, Vatas are able to accomplish a great deal with a very short period of time and can be more productive than any of the other doshas.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah. And so before we get into Pitta and Kapha, I think it's important for your listeners to understand, like I said earlier, we are a combination of all three, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And typically we are higher in one of our doshas than we are the other two. And so in the Ayurvedic world, if you ask me, Shawna, well, what's your dosha, Christina, or what's your constitution, or what's your body type? You could ask it in many different ways. My answer to you would be, I am Pitta Kapha. So I really am Pitta Kapha Vata, but we don't say all three.
Okay. Well, we're going to stop on this break, and then we will be right back. We'll learn more about this. Welcome back to Healing at Soul Level, and I'm your host, Shawna Williams. Today we're talking about Ayurveda with my guest, Christina Vargas. And when we left off, we were talking about the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And she was telling us a little bit about hers, what hers lines up at. So I'll let Christina take over from here.
Right. So if you ask someone what their dosha, their constitution, or their body type is, they might tell you the first one, the one that has the highest percentage. And so my answer to you would be Pitta Kapha. So I am mostly Pitta, secondary Kapha, and tertiary I'm Vata, but we don't really say that in the Ayurvedic world. So if you use percentages, like out of 100%, how much of each of the doshas you have, like I said, you're going to have one that's the highest. Traditionally, you'll have a secondary, and then you'll have a tertiary. Sometimes we have, almost equal amounts, and that's more or less called tridoshic. And, the idea is not to be 33, 33, 33. So just like you have a unique fingerprint and DNA that is unlike anyone else's, you have a unique percentage of each of these doshas. And so we left off with the Vata dosha and talked a little bit about, what their energy was like. And let's move into the Pitta dosha.
Okay.
So it holds the energy, as we said, of the fire and water elements. And while its principal quality is heat, it is also light. It's a little bit oily. It's sharp, and it's unstable, right? Pitta is the force that is responsible for the strength of our intellect. And it really governs the digestion, the absorption, and the assimilation and metabolism of any sensory impressions that we take in. So earlier we talked about those five senses, and, Pitta is responsible for metabolizing everything that we take in through our sense of sight or hearing, or things that we eat. So those that have a primarily Pitta constitution are more brave. They're very courageous than any of the other doshas. They're very ambitious. They're goal-oriented. They're productive. They're planners. They're natural leaders. And they have great public speaking skills, and they're very passionate. So whatever it is that they're passionate about, they're really good at enrolling other people to get on board with them. And again, if we think about an animal, what animal, Shawna, do you think would be more Pitta in nature?
Okay, so my husband is Pitta, like all over. So I would say if I'm thinking about him, it'd be something. I think about lion, but I don't actually feel like in the wild that lion is the most aggressive. It would be more of a tiger.
That's a great.
For me.
Yeah, I mean, those two both are great examples. I always use a bull.
Bull would be great. Yes.
Yeah, so if you think about the energy of a bull, they see their goal, which is, that matador holding the flag, and they're really not going to let anything sort of, stand in their way of, reaching, that matador with the flag. They're not going to, let anything stand in their way. They're very, they're going to charge forth with a lot of fire and great intensity. Mm-hmm. So out of balance, and again, what that means, right? What does it mean when we go out of balance? Well, this means that there has those elements we discussed earlier and the qualities of those elements, right? Hot, cold, and light and dry, stable, mobile. All that means that these qualities within this nature has risen in excess. So the doshas, while they give us life, they can also take away our life if risen in excess. And so out of a balance, a Pitta person is prone to more loose stools or inflammation in the digestion or in the body, period. In the mind, they might, go towards more anger or resentment, impatience, or, critical of themselves and critical and judgmental of others, and perhaps even jealousy. And so Pitta does best when it takes in cooler foods, when it spends time in nature, which promotes the antidote to anger, which is more compassion. They don't overschedule themselves, and they take us, time to appreciate the joys in life. And if you think about the Pitta person, I like to think about them as that type A personality. They're workaholics. Again, they're very passionate and they're goal-oriented. So it's all about checking things off the list. And they don't leave a lot of time for spontaneity or for pleasures in life. And so Pitta does better when they can really appreciate those joys in life.
Yes. Yep. I see that. I see all of that.
Yeah. And so then if we look at our last dosha, the Kapha dosha, it holds the energy of the earth and water elements. And the Kapha dosha is moist, as we said, and cold and heavy. It's also dull and sticky and dense. It's smooth and soft. And Kapha gives us nourishment and stability in our body. And it's the structure and support and lubrication of our body that makes up the bulk of our tissues. Kaphas have great stamina. They've got great memory. They govern the watery emotions such as compassion and love and deep feeling, modesty, forgiveness, and patience. And so this person might find themselves in a career such as a nurse or a caregiver in some way, a teacher. Maybe if they didn't end up in a job like that, maybe they volunteer a lot on the weekends. So they're going to be that best friend that just has a really great listening ear. The Kapha person is going to be in the relationship and in that job for the long haul. So they might not be CEO or a manager or a leader like the Pitta person right away, but maybe they will in their lifetime because they might be in that position or with that company for 30 years. And so the natural progression is to kind of move up the corporate ladder.
Right.
Out of balance, however, right, too much water and too much earth qualities, right? Kaphas experience, symptoms like congestion, sinus congestion, excess mucus, allergies, perhaps weight gain, water retention, more lethargy, depression, and attachment. They get attachment to people. They get attached to things, material things. So hoarding is very common with an out-of-balance Kapha individual. Attachment to the way things used to be or the way they want an outcome to turn out. So Kaphas do best when they wake before the sun. They take in smaller quantities and lighter qualities of food and have regular exercise.
Okay. Well, we're going to stop here and take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hello, and welcome back to Healing at Soul Level. I'm your host, Shawna Williams. Today's guest, Christina Vargas, has been talking about Ayurveda, and when we left off, she was just finishing up talking about the dosha Kapha. So, Christina, I'll let you take it from here.
Right. So we said that Kapha was the earth and water elements, and, they do best when they wake before the sun, like I said, taking in small quantities and lighter qualities of food, and they have a regular exercise regimen. Regular visits to even a sauna or a steam room is really beneficial, and they live in a space that is free of excess, right, because of that, tendency to have more than what they need. And so those are the three doshas, and like I said, we're made up of all three, and living in balance and rhythms of nature can help us to prevent these doshas from rising in excess.
Okay, that's very interesting. I love the fact that since I know a few people, seems like, that have taken these tests and know kind of where they're at, I can see, bits of that in each one of these people. So that's really great and interesting. So tell me a little bit more about bringing balance to these doshas.
Right. So as a practitioner, I really kind of focus, obviously, on what we look at is the prakriti. And that Sanskrit word means what is a person's state of balance. And that is determined at the state of conception. And how a practitioner understands what a person's state of balance is at conception or their healthiest state, we look at physical structure, their long-term tendencies, and we also do a pulse and tongue diagnosis. And that helps us to understand their dosha, their unique nature and percentages of each of these doshas within their body. So like their fingerprints. And that really doesn't change. But what does change is their vikruti. The Vikruti is our state today, or our state with maybe any imbalances. So how do we go from this Prakruti, natural, healthy state to a Vikruti, our unhealthiest state today? Well, I mean, obviously the things that we put in and on our five senses, like we talked about earlier, right? So if we're eating too much of these salty, sweet foods, well, that's going to cause an imbalance and increase the doshas and the qualities of those doshas. The seasons, right, play a huge role in how we're feeling each day. Right now in Dallas, it's so muggy and heavy and, moist. And so, more of those kind of, and it's hot. And so those Kapha, Pitta qualities, maybe people are feeling that today. So the seasons play a huge role in who we are, the relationships we surround ourselves with, our job, all of these things shift and move who we are each day. And so to bring balance as a practitioner, I'm looking at the person's Prakruti, but I'm also looking at, well, what state is out of balance? Sometimes we might have all three doshas out of balance. Maybe there's just a prominent, a dominant dosha that's out of balance. Or maybe you just say, I feel pretty balanced. And so then you look at the seasons. And so right now we're ending in the Pitta season, the summer, it's hot. Mm-hmm. And so we want to look at, the Pitta dosha and bringing in things that are, cooler to the body. Things that are, spending more time in nature and, again, not overscheduling ourselves. As we move into the Vata season, which is next, the winter, we want to bring in, qualities that are going to be more moist because, as we move into the cooler temperatures, our body can become dry. And those qualities are also light. And so we want to bring in foods that are nourishing and grounding. And so if you think about what types of foods are nourishing and grounding, well, those are kind of all the foods that become available during the winter. Root vegetables, right? And using lots of oils like you had mentioned earlier. And spicing our food really well so that it helps to aid in the digestion and absorption of these more heavier foods like root vegetables. Lots of healthy, warm, cooked grains are really beneficial for the Vata dosha. And having, stable routine around mealtime, stable routine around sleep and wake cycles. These are really beneficial. And, to give your listeners, more practices that can balance them during the upcoming Vata season are things like Abhyanga, which is self-oiling the body. And maybe before we get to that, just to finish the seasons, the springtime is the Kapha season. And so the springtime is more, moist and heavy. And so if the listeners haven't already gathered, is that like increases like, right? So if we are more Vata, cold, dry, light, and mobile, then those qualities are going to increase that dosha. So we bring opposites in to bring healing. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And so, again, for the upcoming season, we want to think about oiling the body. That's called Abhyanga in Sanskrit. And it just means to love the body up. And so just taking some warm, traditionally we use medicated oils, so oil that's been, cooked and infused with herbs that are beneficial for that particular dosha. We warm it up and we apply it to the body in long, vigorous motions over the long bones and short, round, circular motions over the joints. And we do this in a warm environment. And this increases circulation. This is very relaxing to the muscles. And this reduces common skin irritants, whether it's hot, inflamed skin or more dry, itchy, rough skin.
Yes, so, that is great. I love the way that feels.
Yeah. And also applying, oil into, a little bit of oil into our ears by just using the tip of our pinky finger and into our nose. Those can be very beneficial from preventing the elements of Vata, we're going to come up into that season soon, of entering into the body and causing things like, flus and colds and dryness. And it also provides a barrier or a protection against the upcoming cold and flu season. And so that oil that we apply to the nose is called nasya oil. And again, it's just a medicated oil that provides, again, lubricant and protection against any pathogens that we might come into contact with. And so oiling the body, both through nasya, by a little bit maybe into the ear, if you're more Vata, and applying it to the body through abhyanga is a really beneficial practice as we enter into the Vata season.
Oh, that works. And I also realized for me, I found that drinking more warm, like teas. Matter of fact, I drink room temperature waters, and sometimes I warm my water, and it's very beneficial for me in the colder seasons. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because what I didn't say earlier is that Ayurveda thrives on prevention. So a lot of people ask me, do you get the flu shot? Should I be getting the flu shot? And that's a personal decision, but we can use Ayurveda to prevent illness.
Oh, see, that's great. We're going to stop and take a quick break, and we will be right back. Hello and welcome back to Healing at Soul Level. I'm your host, Shawna Williams, and today we're talking about Ayurveda with Christina Vargas. So we were going to finish up talking about the warm water in the last segment.
Right. So as I was saying, Ayurveda thrives on prevention. And so, again, as we move into that Vata season, we talked about oiling the body, but then you'd also mentioned that you've been taking in warm liquids. And this is great, actually, pretty much year round. Pitta time during the summer, we can take in a little bit cooler beverages, but that warmth of water that we take in actually helps us to manage and keep our Agni, which is our digestive fire, strong and stable. Versus if we were having cold water all day during the cold Vata season, that puts out our metabolism, that puts out our digestive fire, and then that can cause us to get sick. That can cause us to have more, flu-type symptoms or digestive imbalances. So, like I said, Ayurveda is very preventative, and if we move with the rhythms of nature, we can prevent things like colds and flus and any imbalances in our digestion and our mind and in our spirit.
Okay, well, let's tell people how they can get in contact with you to get to know more about your services and products.
Yeah, so I have a website where there's a lot of great information that someone could read more about what we've talked about today, and that's www.simpleveda.com. And I'm also on Instagram, Simple Veda as well, and I also have a Facebook page. You can also call me at 214-702-6825, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that someone might have. And I offer one-on-one consultations. I also do some Ayurvedic body therapies of oiling the body. I do lots of workshops too, so if someone's more interested in coming to a group setting, you can look at my website. I offer seasonal cleansing, personal yoga sessions, meditation, and I also offer yearly retreats. So hope to see you guys in the community.
And if you're not in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, she also does some phone consultations. So if you're outside of DFW, then you can also give her a call, right?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
I do phone consultations as well. Yeah.
See, that's great. I think I'm going to have to check you out, now that I realize you're just up in Dallas. So that would be a good thing for me to do.
So great. Yeah, we should go have tea sometime, Shawna.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. I'd love it. I'd love it.
Some herbal tea.
Yes. Okay, well, then I'd like to thank you for being on the show, Christina. I mean, you've given so much good advice and information that it's great. I mean, I want everybody to be able to understand and take this in. I mean, I personally don't get flu shots, and I have not been sick. Well, let me take that back. I got sick the other week with allergies is what it was. But I have not been sick in years, and I've been using Ayurveda for that long. So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, like we said, it's easy enough for a 5-year-old to understand, so everyone can apply this. So I'm so glad that it's coming into your life. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. So tune in next week to hear about dreaming with the ancestors with my guest, Valerie Reed. To listen to this podcast and past episodes or to book services with myself, visit my website at indigo-qi.com. It's just been a pleasure being on here with Christina. Don't forget to check her out at simpleveda.com, or you can give her a call at 214-702-6825. You've been listening to Healing at Soul Level, and I'm your host, Shawna Williams. I want to thank you for tuning in. Love and light.
This has been Healing at Soul Level with host Shawna Williams. Listen each week as Shawna will help you discover the different healing modalities and how to use them in your everyday life, right here on Shawna Williams' Healing at Soul Level.